Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. I'm hoping you guys are having a fantastic day. So in today's video, as you can tell by the title, we will be talking about the first winter storm, big, large winter storm of the season. Now this thing will have a lot of rain for the southern areas where it will be warm enough for rain. It will have quite a bit of snow. It won't be historic by any measures. There's definitely been bigger first winter storms, but definitely a lot of snow, especially for the areas that are going to be in the plains. I wouldn't say it's really too early. It's around that time of the year where you start getting these first snowstorms, but nonetheless, first snowstorm is always kind of exciting to talk about as, well, we're rapidly heading into winter. The temperatures are dropping, days are getting shorter. I'm sure many of you at this point have transitioned out of summer, which even a month ago may have felt like it still was. So yeah, you can see the National Weather Service Weather Ready Nation map does show a lot of advisories, warnings, and watches up across the north. And the thing is that there is most likely going to be a second phase of this system. Now, that second phase still remains to be kind of undetermined. It looks as if it won't be necessarily a heavy snow maker, but more of a ice/light snow maker across much further south into Nebraska, Iowa, South Dakota. So again, that's going to be something we'll have to watch. First, let's start off by showing you the GFS. So right now we do have areas of showers and kind of bands of rain marauding across the east central, really I would say just the central United States. There's a high pressure across the northeast, which is actually allowing some pretty cool temperatures and many frost, as you saw on the National Weather Service Weather Ready Nation map. And a lot of rain will be out ahead of this thing, or sorry, behind this thing, out ahead of this system. You can see that these showers are going to be beginning tonight into tomorrow. We do see a little bit of snow across southern Saskatchewan here. I believe this is actually southern Saskatchewan. And do note we have a system, a large one, that makes its landfall onto the northwest by early Wednesday, late Tuesday, while we already have streams of showers and storms developing across the mid-central part of the country. Again, this high pressure, pretty strong one, driving towards the south and east, really funneling a lot of this moisture up into pretty far north. And again, we do start seeing a band of snow develop across Montana and Idaho and into North Dakota and southern Saskatchewan and Manitoba by late Wednesday, and you can see that this thing continues into Thursday in several waves. Now again, further south where it's warm enough across Minnesota, Iowa, Wisconsin, Illinois, Nebraska. The exact placement of this is still a little bit yet uncertain, but do note there's some yellows, some darker greens that indicate some heavier rain, probably some thunderstorms, and you can see that this thing does drop quite a bit of rain for an extended period of time. However, look at the snow, also very impressive. Idaho, the Bitterroots, Wyoming, a lot of Montana there into southern, especially eastern portions of Montana, getting a lot of snow there. And you can see that by late Thursday into Friday, this thing's moving out into the Dakotas, South Dakota. There could really be quite a bit of snow, especially across the areas where this thing kind of stationary, or I guess lies out for a few days. Notice Montana could be under snow, especially eastern central sections, for quite a bit of time, maybe 2 or 3 days. Now this thing skirts through Wyoming and finally picks up speed. Behind it is a very, very powerful cold front. Notice this thing moves into Minnesota. Not much snow for, say, the Twin Cities, but South Dakota, North Dakota, most of you guys get some snow, panhandle of Nebraska, and then that thing skirts out. Right, you may be thinking that's it. Well, no, not quite. We do have obviously a lot of cold air behind this system, which is what pretty much all the models are showing. However, you can see what we do see as well is another band of snow developing potentially around Utah, Colorado, and into southern Wyoming. This will be to do with a low pressure that's found itself at the bottom of this trough, where the jet stream is actually pretty powerful, so there's a lot of lift in the atmosphere, and you can see that there is quite a bit of snow that kind of ejects out of this. Quite some heavy rates of snow also. Don't get deceived, some of these colors are pretty strong and dark here. As this spills into Nebraska, South Dakota, Iowa, you can see some ice, freezing rain. It does start getting weaker, so the rates of heavy snow won't continue, but there could be a brief band of maybe 6 hours of light to moderate snow across. You can see Iowa, according to the GFS, into southern Minnesota, Wisconsin, and more rain on the southern sides. And again, you can see some of this ice and sleet may even get as far as Oklahoma, Kansas, the panhandle of Texas. So those areas could also pick up a little bit of snow. However, then we see most of this kind of abating and a lot of this moisture, the heavier moisture, staying to the south. So no massive storm out of that one. But still, for the front range of the Rockies and potentially into Nebraska, Iowa, and Minnesota, a little bit of snow. And I hope you noticed that. Look at this trough. Very, very strong trough. So this will mean very, very cold air. Even some lake effect will get turned on from this. And you can see it pretty much like some sort of a clipper coming by and delivering very, very cold temperatures for much of the eastern United States. By Halloween, you can see actually decently dry for the northern half, wet towards the south, but very, very cold Halloween. Maybe one of the coldest ones in a while. But it always seems that on Halloween, the weather always gets a little bit crummy. So I'll show you the total snowfall according to the GFS. Again, pretty impressive. Over a foot likely across North Dakota, Montana. You could see Yellowstone, the first large winter storm of the year. Many areas could get even closer to 2 feet of snow into Utah, Colorado, especially with that second band, right? As we said, Nebraska could pick up some snow. Northern Nebraska, southern South Dakota, and even into Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin, a few inches of snow. While this will probably have trouble accumulating as it will be falling on relatively warm ground still, there could be a dusting and whatnot. And the first snow of the year always catches some people off guard. So that is definitely something we will have to keep an eye on for. So that is the GFS. I do want to show you its temperature anomaly graph just to show you the scope of this cold air, because the MSLP precipitation map that I was just showing you didn't do justice for that. So again, out ahead of this, very warm. I'm sure if you're in cities like Chicago, Milwaukee, Des Moines, this week and tomorrow will be very warm, very balmy. You won't be expecting anything, but notice across Montana, North Dakota, our friends there already struggling with very cold temperatures, and this continues spilling further south into the later part of the week. At this point, reaching the Mississippi, Iowa, Kansas kind of regions, Mississippi, I meant the Mississippi River, not Mississippi State. And you notice North Dakota at this point, South Dakota, very, very cold temperatures, potentially even some approaching records. And notice this thing continues spilling. So by Monday, October 30th, October 31st, again, very, very cold, very chilly for a good portion of the United States. Some of these anomalies, look at the South right there. That is, again, getting to some potentially record-breaking values in terms of the cold. A very cold Halloween indeed, as I mentioned. Many areas in the 40s, including southern Texas, southern Louisiana in the 40s. Further north, these are daytime temperatures, right? This isn't nighttime. The nighttime, it gets a lot colder. You can see widespread frost and freezes, and this continues for a few days. So definitely looking more like late or mid-November as opposed to late October. But yeah, early taste of winter. Good news is this extreme cold doesn't stick around for too long. It doesn't warm back up immediately either. You can see the GFS does show this plume of warmth, but again, this is by Sunday, November 5th, so quite a bit away from when this thing initially impacts the central United States, which would be this weekend. And then later on, the GFS does show even more cold air, which is just doing with the most recent model run. Whether or not that's true, we'll have to wait and see. I want to show you the European model. So this is kind of the contending version of the GFS. It's usually either or if they agree, then it's a miracle, the European and GFS. Notice the European does show bands of showers, again, marauding across the central United States out ahead of this system. Finally getting more organized as this thing formulates itself. It shows the snow, the European, a little bit further north than what the GFS does, just by a smidge, maybe 50 or 100 miles, but you can see a lot of heavy rain as well. And again, this system, similar fashion to the GFS, takes it out into southern Canada but not before dropping quite a bit of snow across, again, the Dakotas, mainly North Dakota, Montana. And just like the GFS does show that second system, you can see right there developing that snow. It's a little bit further north though, so you can see more snow across North Dakota, not as much as South Dakota, some towards Wyoming and Colorado, but again, a little bit more towards the north oriented. And it tries producing some sort of a snowy system here, but it ultimately fails. So it's interesting. We'll have to wait and see which one does a better handling. But just like the GFS, the European pulls in some extremely cold temperatures with this clipper, and extremely cold for this time of the year, right? So you won't be getting negative 18 in Illinois, but you will be getting probably close to 0 Fahrenheit across the north. And Illinois, since I mentioned it, probably to 20s, mid 20s, low 20s even. Definitely cold and not warm. And in terms of total snowfall, I'm going to show you this, assuming a 10-to-1 ratio, which is a little reasonable. Maybe it will be a little lower. Sorry, a little higher across these areas as it will be so cold, which is unreasonable because usually you'd assume it lower than 10-to-1 ratio because it's warmer, it's October, but not. But in this case, you can see they're showing again potentially well over a foot across the Dakotas, almost the whole state of Montana being covered in a decent amount of snow. Same with Wyoming, Colorado, the Rockies into Utah, the Wasatch, the Bitterroots, and the Cascades, of course, getting quite a bit. And this spreads quite a bit of snow into, again, southern Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and of course Alberta there, and of course central northern Ontario. But that there's a lot less people that live here than across some of these plain states here. So that is that from the European. You can see they're both showing quite a bit of snowfall. I could show you the total accumulated precipitation, so this includes snow and rainfall, just to show you that there could be quite a bit of rain out ahead of this thing. Oklahoma City, Texas, there, Dallas just west, really heavy amounts, 3 to 4 inches. And the GFS, as you saw, was showing very similar. characteristics with this. Quite a bit of rain towards the southern side, especially in the areas where thunderstorms do occur. Where that exactly lines up remains to be seen, but definitely will be a decent amount of rain out ahead of this thing. Canadian models, this is kind of like the third model I sometimes look at. Very similar with the rain, you could see showing very heavy amounts, similar to the European, and in terms of the snowfall, it also shows quite a bit across pretty similar areas as the GFS and European. Notably, though, it does show quite a bit of snow across South Dakota, North Dakota, there further south. I assume the Canadian makes that second snow system a little stronger than what the GFS and European do. I would at this point discount it because usually the Canadian's the worst out of all the three. So if it shows something on its own, usually it's wrong, not always. So yeah, again, there's that first one and that second one. You can see the Canadian adds a lot more vigor and snow to it across North Dakota, Wyoming. Nothing insane, but still 4 to 5, 6 inches could be possible. And you can see it does show some ice here, which could even go as far as I-80 there, northward speaking and southward speaking, again into the panhandles of both Texas and Oklahoma. So we'll have to see. Maybe the Canadian's onto something. I don't really think so, but yeah, just to show you the anomalies in terms of temperature on the European model, it's also very, very significant. 2-meter temperature anomalies. Let me show you the new model run, which is the latest one that goes out 240 hours. Again, very warm out ahead of this across the east and central United States, but then it gets cold pretty darn quickly, and you can see the European, just like the GFS, showing some very, very strong anomalies. And again, you know, Halloween of next week could be pretty darn chilly. The 31st right there showing some really strong anomalies. So again, and at that point, it's a question of how long this sticks around. The European ensembles do show this cold air stubbornly moving away, giving way to warmth, not all across the United States. Here, the cool air stays and potentially expands, so we'll have to wait and see. It's definitely a little tricky forecast to see how November plays out, but for now, this is what we have. Notice, again, as I mentioned, a lot of these winter storm watches and warnings across Montana, winter storm impact possibilities. You can see some of this stuff is actually pretty high impact, so this isn't, you know, at first a tiny system. This is a decent one, and I mean, I could click on some large cities here, Great Falls, or larger speaking from Montana's perspective, 4 to 8, 2 to 4, 1 to 3. So again, in total, over a foot is very likely across some of these areas, if not almost certain. And again, if you get further onto the Dakotas, it's a little bit more of a question. But I mean, you could see even Wednesday, right? Snow heavy at times. The winter storm watch probably it gets close to 6 or more inches of snow. I'd not be surprised to see a foot in some of the areas across the Dakota. So not massive, but I mean, 12 inches for a first system is definitely something. And we'll have to keep an eye on that second one. And of course, there are some flash flood watches from the heavy rain. There may be some more areas added on as, well, there will be quite a bit of these rain chances. And you can see there's already some rain going on right now. That's basically it for today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you all in the next episode. See ya. Bye.